Hello, everybody! Good
Hi.
Thursday of the month. I almost said good morning. It's not even morning here. It's 1 p.m.
It's always morning.
It's always morning.
Somewhere. I mean, look at all these locations in the chat.
I know. That was a good tip. James Montemagno had that tip on our last .NET streaming town hall. Now all of the streamers get together and talk every month. And he was like, you should show where people are from during the walk-up. And I was like, ooh, we have people all over the place. I have seen Albany, New York just came in. We've got India, Algeria, Georgia, not the country, the state. We might have the country. Brazil, lots of places. So good morning, good evening, good early morning, good midnight, good midday.
Tomorrow. We've probably got some people in tomorrow.
Yeah, happy Friday for some of you folks. I'm Maddy Legere. I'm a PM on the Xamarin team. Welcome to Xamarin Community Stand-Up. I have here with me the two coolest people in the world, David. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, David Ortinau, Principal Program Manager for .NET, working on Xamarin and, of course, .NET MAUI, and brought along my partner in all crimes that we commit against .NET, I guess. I don't know. That was horrible. We don't commit crimes. John.
Hey. Yeah, so I'm John. I've been around the Xamarin community for a bit, but now I'm getting to work a lot more with David and Maddy, which is fantastic, as the Forms, MAUI, whatever, engineering lead. So hopefully I'll get to disrupt things a lot more going forward.
There you go. Disrupt. Oh,
That's
that was the word that I should have used.
It's a good startup buzzword. Disrupt.
That's why I brought you.
Perfect.
Because together,
and also representing Canada too. So speaking of countries,
oh yeah,
it's morning. It's not morning, but it's morning.
It's true.
But it's really cold there, right? Like, are you guys already out in the igloos and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, we just got our first snow finally, which was fun. Ooh. Tobogganing, yay!
Ooh, fancy. My goodness, it has been a busy. The end of 2020 is going by much faster than the beginning, middle. So that's good. Busy month last month. .NETConf. Got a lot of links. Hold on. There you go. They're posting. Posting everywhere, all over the place. We're streaming right now to YouTube's Facebook Live, Periscope, and Twitch all at once because technology is great.
But I'm sure I have a Periscope account because I'm sure that I opened one when it was a first round. I don't know how to get to it.
I don't even know. Does something own Periscope? Does Twitter own them?
I don't know. I should probably check my have you been hacked? What is the website?
Oh, have I been pwned? Great website.
Yeah, and see if my password is.
So I remember periscoping from a Google I/O event in San Francisco with Mr. Montemagno years ago as we were waiting in line. That was fun.
That's scary.
Yeah.
A little bit. Not too much. Oh my goodness. Okay, so today's community stand-up is all about .NET MAUI updates. After we go through some blogs, of course, though, because there were some really great blogs this month. And want to make sure we highlight those as always. But Dave has some slides.
Yep.
Like a presentation or something. I don't know. He really prepared for this. We've got John here to add his wisdom.
Yeah, people are super eager to know what we're doing for .NET 6 and .NET MAUI. Is it even happening? So we're here to answer questions. If you have questions, only got 20 slides, so it shouldn't take very long, but I'm sure there's a lot of content. It's very content dense. Want you to know what we've been doing for the past 10 months since build. But there's so much happening in the Xamarin ecosystem and the .NET ecosystem today that I was like, we got to do the blogs. I mean, there's been 10 different virtual conferences just in the past 4 weeks.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, if you missed .NETConf, good segue. Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
We recapped it all for you. It's like we do this sometimes before, maybe. We've got all the videos in here. Learn about XAML Hot Reload 2.0, which is not the official name, but it is what we call it now. But that's the hot reload that has UWP support, and it's faster. And it has the live visual tree, which is sick. Learn, as always, about Hot Restart. If you're not using Hot Restart yet, now's the time. It should be stable soon. I don't know but soon. I use it now all the time. I have not updated my Mac from Big Sur, to Big Sur, and I think I said that's still in the keynote. So you can tell I haven't opened it. And of course, Xamarin.Forms 5, which we talked a bunch about last time. There's a Xamarin show. You're going to continue to see us blab on about Xamarin.Forms 5 pretty much for the rest of time because it's amazing. But, it's not what we're going to talk about today. So go watch .NETConf because it was great. And we had a really good slate of community members in .NETConf. Some names you might see that are familiar here. And I got to host between some of them, so I got to ask questions. It's cool. It was fun. Had a good time. So check those out. The usual Xamarin stuff happens in the beginning of Dave and my talk, but we get really deep into Xamarin.Forms 5 too, which is great. Of course, we have a whole month ahead of us. I thought it was going to be a slow month because the holidays. It's not. It's a crazy month. There's a bunch going on. A lot of mobile groups, mobile developer groups kind of getting things together throughout December, which is awesome. So plenty of Xamarin content. This is about all I have the bandwidth for this month emotionally. It's just watching people talk about things. So this is a good month for that. Very good. All right. Close these. I'm going to post the links again. Copy, paste, and I'll put it up as a banner. So now you can go follow along with me if you'd like to. I only have a couple, and by a couple, I mean, I think 7, because I want to be pretty breezy for Maui, but oh my gosh. Okay. The first one, Brandon Minnick, who the second C#9 came out, was, DMing me on Teams, so Xamarin C#9, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't know. You might know Brandon. He's on our customer cloud developer advocacy team. I don't know. He does a lot of Xamarin stuff. He's also a big fan of C# UI. So anytime you want to hear about C# UI, go to Brandon. He's great. But he has been diving a lot into, sorry, I just totally lost my train of thought. I saw it. Could you not scream, please? Yeah, let me turn down my gain. I know. Diving into C#9 as soon as it came out and looking at the immutable objects feature. You can hook them into SQLite. Every app has a database, basically. So some easy peasy code samples and all that. Super cool to look at. This was a demo, I think, in maybe the .NETConf keynote as well. But if you want to start modernizing your apps using some of the C#9 features, go for it. It's gonna be a good time. So, Steven. We haven't had a blog from Steven in a little bit, I think. I don't think we had one last month, which was weird. This one's interesting too. Improving the touch targets in your apps using Xamarin.Forms. So, I have thumbs. My thumbs are a certain size and they can't get as small as I want them to sometimes. But Steven, well known on his blog for good design. And this is very user-focused examples of how to make your app a little bit easier to use for people, basically. This is something I always say about why it's hard to do desktop apps with, desktop and mobile cross-platform apps, is because your desktop screen has a mouse that you can click on things with, and that can, let you click on much smaller buttons. And then mobile apps, you have to use a thumb. So he's got some good links here to the Apple Human Interface Guidelines, the Google Material Design Guidelines, all that stuff. And I guess there are going to be some helpers in the Xamarin Community Toolkit, which is the best. So check that out.
Yeah, and that's already there.
Oh.
The helpers are there now. I think that happened recently.
November 20th. Wow, that was fast.
Yeah.
If you're unfamiliar with the Xamarin Community Toolkit, Dave, you're getting a lot of comments on the lighting. It is totally mesmerizing. I love it.
Is it mesmerizing? Do I need to stop it from cycling?
No, it's so good. Keep it going. I love it. Now I have to up my game.
Well, I feel like I'm late to the game on the lights thing. But I just needed something different. My whole space was so cluttered. I felt like I needed a fresh set.
Less talking, more lights. I can do that. All right. I'll see you guys later. No. All right. Tiny MVVM. Love it. Love a good Daniel Tiny MVVM blog. This one I clicked on because it said cake, and it's not about cake the dessert. It's about cake the plugin. But it's a cross-service plugin that lets you, I don't know, do a bunch of stuff. Something about Azure DevOps. Check out the website, cakebuild.net. C# make. And
we use a ton of cake in our own repos. Cake
Do we
is
really?
awesome. Just saying.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm very much on the tooling side of the house, so I don't know what we do in SDK land a lot, but it's super cool. And, you know, Daniel Tiny MVVM kind of maintains a lot of that. So definitely check this blog out to learn a little bit more about Cake and how he has integrated it with some of his like Azure DevOps stuff and I guess GitHub pipelines, whichever one this is for Tiny MVVM. Cool. Oh, Maui blog. Johan sent me this. It's very cool. It's just touch bar UI. So let me see where the screenshot is. Ooh. Where's the screenshot? Oh, it's up at top. See? Right up here. Mac OS apps. Love Mac apps in Xamarin. I think David has some Mac pull requests in the links. I don't know what you're going to talk about with that. I'm kind of scared. But in the touch bar, which is pretty cool, some custom code for Xamarin.Forms make your touch bar show stuff. So this is kind of showing what song is playing. And if you're unfamiliar with the touch bar, it's the thing that replaced the function keys that everyone was really mad about. And then I started to use it and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And now I don't really mind it anymore.
Yeah, you still have the option to choose normal keys. And I think they even brought back physical function keys on certain models. So I really miss the escape key. I'll never forget Joseph doing a demo with Miguel, and he reached for the escape key and had a visceral reaction to it not being real. I can relate to that experience.
Yeah. I would like the escape key and then the rest of them to be virtual. That would be cool.
Having the virtual there is definitely convenient, and you can interact with it, which is super cool.
Yeah. Like this, using Xamarin.Forms. All right. Charlene. So Charlene and Rendy, Zamgirl and Zamboy, celebrated a marriage anniversary this past month. So congratulations, you two, if you're in the chat. The pictures were beautiful. She had a blog this month about simplifying bindable properties with type converters. So I'm all about simplifying. I am not all about type converters, but I actually found this pretty easy to follow along with. And she uses font size as an example, which is pretty good. A lot of people have issues with like, you know, making fonts kind of responsive and all that. So definitely check this one out. The usual, lots of code, lots of walkthroughs and screenshots. So super helpful, especially if you're someone who is kind of more on the starting out part of Xamarin.Forms and you're just like, what is a bindable property? What is a type converter? That's a good place to look. Good place to look because it's very practical. Oh my goodness. The first prototype. Can your iOS app be installed on a Mac M1? Very cool. So the new Macs came out. You might have gotten the development kits. I know we got some on the Xamarin team, which is exciting. And we're trying to get everything to work on it. You know, all the things. But one of the cool features on the Apple Silicon Macs is that you can run iOS apps on your actual computer, like not screen sharing, like you just run it. Yep. So you can see like this eBay app in here supports Macs with macOS 11 and an M1. So this is a walkthrough to just see how to, if it actually works. And then I don't know where the walkthrough is to make your app work, but it's pretty easy to find out if it's going to. It's surprisingly simple. You just Google it.
Yes.
I think this happens for a lot of people, right? Am I wrong?
Well, to get your already compiled iOS app running on an M1, it just works.
Yeah.
That's the whole gist of that. To get your iOS app to run elsewhere and to start taking advantage of desktop things, then that's when you get into the Catalyst space. And we will be talking about that here in a little bit.
Ooh,
that does require some additional work. And Frank Krueger has kind of been tip of the spear in the community leading on that stuff. So
it's pretty cool.
That was dirty.
Just Google it and find out. I like that. All right, last one. Mfractor blog. Matthew Robbins. Hi, Matt. It's been a while. Another C#9 blog, but does a good summary of what's going on with MAUI, which we'll talk about, and .NET 5 and all that stuff, and C#9, and kind of how you can start using all this stuff that's out today. So very exciting if you are interested in being on the cutting edge of all the things. So with that, what is the cutting edge, Dave? What's going on?
Well, let's switch to my screen and let's start talking about it.
And let me take
so I think this is why everybody's probably here. But hopefully you enjoyed the blog posts as well. And you'll join us more frequently because every month we'll dedicate some time to telling you what is happening in our progress towards .NET 6 and the development of .NET MAUI. So we have other touch points that you'll be able to track as well. Let's go ahead and, oh, by the way, so I had to choose a bot for this. I didn't get to check my Twitter recently. I was asking for help choosing, and everybody seemed to say, don't choose, use them all. So there you go. We've got a bunch of bots. But hey, we're going to have to put in a request to update the MAUI bot over here to make sure we get the new colors and everything. So let's start going here. So the first place I want to direct you to check progress, or at least know how we're thinking about things, is the Themes of .NET website. So you can go here and you can see all the epics, the high level visionary things, the goals, the work that is ongoing for .NET 6. Probably the biggest piece of it for us, certainly, but I think even overall, is the work that didn't make it into .NET 5, which is bringing Xamarin and Mono fully in to the .NET, shared experiences, using the same project systems, all the work that we've outlined here at a very high level. Now, again, these are high level user stories, and John and I and Maddy are working on getting more specific tasks identified within them. I mean, we kind of already know the work we're doing and we're already acting on it, but putting it into this format so that it's open and available to you to see. Of course, you can see other specs and things like that on the .NET MAUI repo. But this is a first touch point for you, a place to go see. The probably my favorite part is when Mo first tweeted out the availability of this website, which I think he was instrumental in putting together. He said, hey, come check out. We're doing .NET 6 completely in the open, and you can come see us changing our minds. So want to make sure that it's clear to everybody that just like you and all of your projects and things that you work on a regular basis, there is some level of adjustment and change and pivoting that happens over the course of time, especially on something that's going to drive through November of 2021. So what is .NET MAUI? It is the evolution of Xamarin.Forms for sure. And so there's typically two reactions that I hear to that. There's the reaction from those who didn't feel Xamarin.Forms met their requirements, and that's a disappointment to them. And then there's those who love using Xamarin.Forms and it does everything that they need it to do, and they're being very successful with it. And there's, well, what does that mean for me? What am I going to get from this? The good news is we're taking all the things we've learned. We call them learnings, right? All the things we've learned from 6+ years of Xamarin.Forms being in the marketplace, talking to customers, talking to developers, seeing what you're doing, really empathizing with the challenges that you have, and then also looking at the competitive landscape and saying, well, what's going on around us and how do we move things into the future to make sure that you as .NET developers continue to be productive, but also competitive in your space. We want to make sure that you feel like you have a job tomorrow, So those are all things that are on our mind about this and are informing the choices that we're making as we make this transition to .NET MAUI. So we're extending from mobile to embracing more desktop, and we'll talk about how we're doing that and what that's going to look like. And then, really what are those scenarios that will help us to drive performance and extensibility. So extensibility really comes into talking about platform renderers. How do we more easily customize our UI? How do we more easily get to platform-specific APIs? I mean, the core value promise of Xamarin has always been it's native. It's native UI, native APIs, and you have access to them. But traditionally in Xamarin.Forms, we've heard custom renders are a pain, effects are a pain. How can we do this more easily? So we've got some great work in here that's going to drive towards that. And performance is always a concern. Pretty much anywhere you do software development at all, you're always wanting to eke out more performance. But we have some very specific things that we're trying to achieve during .NET 6. And we're super excited to see how quick the performance looks like and the benchmarks have been on .NET 5, because we, having the shared common BCL base class libraries, we inherit all of that. So we're really excited about that. So just another recap before I get into the actual stand-up of what we've been working on. MAUI does stand for Multi-Platform App UI. We like our acronyms, or our, isn't that what it's called? Acronym? Yeah. So, it's one of those things you get your mouth starts moving and then your brain's like, wait, was that the right thing? But this is all about integrating Xamarin into .NET. And it's both from a technical standpoint, but it's also bringing it into the repository, showing that it's unified, sharing as much as we possibly can across all of .NET, and making sure that we have common experiences for the developer, for the tooling that is supported, and all that sort of thing. In some of the common experiences that you're going to start to be able to use more of, the CLI, command line, to do .NET new, .NET run, .NET build, which may be something you use a lot, may be something you never need to use because Visual Studio takes care of all those things for you. But it's going to become available by virtue of the fact that we now share all the build stuff and all the all the things that the rest of .NET has been using. And then Visual Studio Code, again, kind of comes along for the ride because you have the command line. You'll be able to do more things in Visual Studio Code today or tomorrow than you can today. But I want to make clear the caveat that Visual Studio full IDE is the place where all the functionality resides. So things like IntelliSense are not promised to come to Visual Studio Code for XAML. Right. So I want to set that clear expectation that while you can use it, is it going to be the best experience for you during the previews of .NET 6 or even when we launch .NET 6? Probably not, because we have to budget, where do we put things? And being able to run your .NET apps with .NET 6 on Android, iOS, Mac OS, and Windows, that's a P0, right? That's can't not do that. So that's going to be a much higher priority than some of these things that are currently experimental. They're available to you by virtue of the way the technology works, but it's not an experience that we're going to be polishing up and delivering and supporting. So I want to be very clear about that, where that applies. And then support for modern app models like Blazor, like Comet being a C# UI model view update inspired way of building mobile applications and desktop applications by virtue of MAUI. But I do want to make clear, it bounces in, look at that, that those are also experimental. Blazor itself is not experimental, but the Blazor mobile bindings is experimental. But I will tell you that we are working very closely with the engineers working on both of those experiments, and they are informing a lot of the core decisions that we're making in .NET MAUI so that we're very future forward looking. Right. So that as, things like Swift UI, Flutter, Jetpack Compose, and all these other things in the competitive ecosystem start to gain some traction and you're interested in them, we are in a position where we have a framework that can adapt to those things. Wow, I'm in full presenter mode here, aren't I? Let me just not skip, but let me cover a few more things. So what are our goals? These are the things that we're striving for. Are we going to hit every single one of them 100%? More than likely not. But that doesn't mean we're not aggressively trying to do all of these things. So 12 months of quality Xamarin releases. If you're on the Xamarin.Forms train and you're using Xamarin.Forms 5, you're using Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android. We continue to service those all the way through the release of .NET 6. And then there's also going to be an additional 12 months of support through .NET 7. For sure. So in terms of quality, we've reorganized the project. which I'll touch on in a second, standardized class and naming structure, which is some of that benefits more contributors, but also when you're looking to figure out what the heck is happening under the hood, it should be easier for you to find things. Performance, again, is always something we're striving for. In particular, I know that cold start's an easy one to point at. Today, you can achieve a 100 millisecond startup and even faster if you really architect your application extremely aggressively, but that may not deliver the best user experience for your application. We talk to plenty of customers who say, I don't really care what the app startup is because my customer starts the app, and as long as it's up and going within a few seconds, they're going to use it throughout the rest of the day. I'm more interested in the performance of screen-to-screen transitions, server and back, when we're making updates, field service apps, those sorts of things. So we want to make sure that we're cognizant of the whole spectrum of where performance is most important to you, the customers. Design, we're going to be delivering themes in the box so that you can more easily see good design, but also, you can just use those base themes without customizing everything. And what you get out of the box today is the bare bones stuff you get from the native platforms, and they are not consistent with each other, and they're often not very pleasing. So we're going to add strong theme support using our existing themes and styling that's already part of the product. We'll improve it. Visual State Manager will be improved, and that'll help create a much better design out of the box. And then, of course, the platforms. So this is up on the .NET MAUI GitHub. Everybody should go check that out for sure. And so this kind of gives you a side-by-side comparison of what you get out of the box with Xamarin.Forms 5 and where we're going with .NET MAUI. So these are the things that we're striving for. I saw a comment earlier in the chat, really excited about the possibility of Linux support. That's absolutely on our radar, but I want to be very clear that in our plans, what we are going to be supporting at launch, Linux is not part of that. So it is something that could be evolved from the GDK Sharp backend that Xamarin.Forms has today, but somebody's going to need to step up and kind of help contribute and bring that over the line so that it will run with .NET 6. Of course, Mac OS, and we're going to talk about Mac Catalyst and how that fits into the picture here in just a bit. Samsung is on board and working towards support for Tizen, so that's really exciting. And I don't have details, but I've heard they are continuing to invest, and I'm excited that they have some. They'll have some cool announcements coming up, I believe. I don't have details. Don't ask me. Windows, of course. So WinUI 3, I'll show you a little bit of that in just a bit. And then WPF in terms of where that support is. Because it ran on .NET Core before, and I believe it even runs on .NET 5 today. John, I'm looking at you. Are you going to nod at me? You don't know.
Sorry, I'm trying to answer a question in the chat about multi-window and stuff. So yeah, we're going to look at multi-window stuff in the application lifecycle.
Cool. So WPF is still considered to be community supported. Of course, within Microsoft, we are continuing to bring it forward and make it useful in .NET 6 all up. But in terms of the .NET MAUI Windows implementations, what is there for WPF today continues to be community supported. That could change, but right now that's where things stand. We'll talk about renders in a bit. The app models I kind of already touched on with the Blazor and the Comet stuff. Single project is coming for .NET MAUI, and I'll talk a bit more about what those experiences look like to help you be more productive. John just mentioned multi-window. Multi-targeting is super cool, and so we're excited to see that be better supported in the IDEs. We're already using it thanks to Claire Novotny's SDK extras, right? Which is awesome. Thank you, Claire.
Yeah.
Pixel drawn controls. So making it easier for you to use native graphics drawing APIs to render your UI as opposed to only relying on third-party things like Skia Sharp, although third-party kind of feels like us at this moment because we support Skia Sharp. We do the bindings. But we're going to be doing more there to build really performant UIs as well as help you achieve that consistency you need across platforms. SDK style is a big thing for us for the project system because it really gives us a much stronger, stable, consistent experience within the IDEs. Certainly helps the IDE teams only have to worry about one project system instead of the multitude of them that they have to today because of the way our project system works slightly different. So I
It just
mentioned,
makes your project so much nicer to look at, that source file.
well, that's funny because when I asked Jonathan Peppers, hey, how would you like me to kind of describe SDK style with .NET 6? He says, show them the CS proj. It's so small. I was like, maybe that would be sexy. I don't know. But it's true. I guess it's really kind of what you see when you look at your Xamarin.Forms .NET Standard Library project, right? It's pretty bare. Yeah. Similar. All right. So what have we been doing for the last 10 months? So probably the biggest thing we have been doing is the Xamarin.Forms 5 stabilization. We are looking at a late December target. So we're weeks away. We're in December. We're in the zone, red zone. And we're in red zone offense for sure. So we want to get that across the line. Why is that in a .NET MAUI stand-up? Because first of all, it's the same team. And secondly, because all that stabilization and work that we're doing there benefits MAUI and sets a much more stable starting point for us when we start releasing previews of MAUI. We're cleaning up the repository, making it more organized. You can see this if you compare the 5.0 branch on GitHub to the main handler branch, which is actually where the day-to-day MAUI work is happening within Xamarin.Forms to start moving things over, building out the renderer or the handlers. And I love it because this slide doesn't do it justice. You got to go click around through the folders and get a sense of just how much better organized it was. Because, Xamarin.Forms grew organically over 6 years. It started out closed source. And, when things don't start open source, you're kind of like, that doesn't matter. I don't really care who else sees this. But now that we are fully open source, it's nice to take a fresh look at this and give it a nice new haircut, if you will. So we have been doing quite a bit of work on porting renderers to the mapper handler architecture. We have actually done several live streams, virtual events over the past, like 2 months, where several of our engineers have done presentations showing this work off. James Clancy showed this work off. So you can find some presentations up on the YouTube that show you some of this. But let me give you kind of the high level of what this is achieving. Right now in Xamarin.Forms, you have a button renderer, for example, and that might be your iOS platform, your Android platform, whatever you want to imagine. It actually knows about and holds a reference to Xamarin.Forms things. The Xamarin.Forms button is in there. And so there's a real tight coupling that happens. You can't just take that platform powerful button renderer and start using it apart from Xamarin.Forms. And when we started doing the experiments with Comet, with Blazor mobile bindings, it became more clear that there was real benefit in extracting these things apart. So that now that button renderer is really a button handler, implements an interface, iButton, almost sounds like good programming. And then from there, the formsness of it, the MVVM or MVU or Blazor or however those platform controls are going to be used is really where the MAUI button, the Comet button, I made up names for these buttons. These aren't things that exist, but they could. And they probably will. So now, for example, Fabulous, if you've ever used Fabulous F# to do Xamarin.Forms things, you always have to type view dot. Maybe they'll continue to use that pattern, but I think that this opens up new opportunities. Maybe that's a horrible example, and Tim will yell at me about that later. But it opens up more possibilities and kind of removes the impediment that the Xamarin.Forms framework provides. Now, the other important thing to know about this is I originally called this the slim renderer architecture because in my mind, one of the biggest benefits is that we're removing all the wrapping views. So there's an immediate performance benefit to doing that. Your UI tree is going to be much flatter now. We kind of started that, prototyped it on the most important controls on Android when we introduced fast renderers back in what was it, Xamarin.Forms 3 or something? On that note, I will mention that over the weekend, I upgraded the Netflix clone on Javier's repo from Xamarin.Forms 3.1 with packages.config to Xamarin.Forms 5 with package ref. Updated all my NuGets, and there were a lot of NuGets in there. no problems. I had no problems. And I did it both on Mac and on Windows. I was really happy about that. So, hey, things are getting better. So that's a bit about the architecture. John, is there anything you would add about how I'm describing the handlers? I'm not getting into like extension methods and things like that.
Yeah, no, I think this is a good overview. I mean, I think the focus on, why we're doing it is really important. So good job.
Yeah, again, this is very future forward looking. It benefits us today for all the reasons that I've already mentioned. But, again, Comet can move much faster now. Fabulous could move faster. Oh, I didn't even list Blazor on there, did I? That's a huge miss.
Yeah, Blazor mobile bindings. I think there was a question even about it. It's
Xamarin, as it once upon a time was mangled. So what can you track on this? Like, what is in the repo today? What's in progress? What can you use? So if you go up to the .NET MAUI wiki, you'll see a status page. We've just revamped it to kind of thin it down and make it a bit more clear where the work is happening. The previous status page was property by property, and that still exists, and we may bring that back. But it seemed much more useful to show it this way. So you can see the views, the layouts. I think I have the layouts over here. Yeah. So some things are in progress. The red, or not red, the yellow exclamation triangle indicates things that have not yet been worked on. But stack layout is in progress, usable for the most part today. It doesn't do everything the stack layout does in Xamarin.Forms. But then, back here on the controls, a lot of these things have existing PRs, and we just need to get past Xamarin.Forms 5 so we can start merging a lot of these things. Something that I didn't include in the slides here, but I should mention is as we're making these changes, you think about this architecture back here. If you have custom renderers, you may be freaking out. You may be wondering, well, wait a second, are my custom renderers going to work? Is this like a huge breaking change to bringing my Xamarin.Forms code to .NET MAUI? No, we are very cognizant of making sure that we can, as easily as possible, bring Xamarin.Forms apps forward to .NET MAUI. The choice, so your renderers will work by virtue of an adapter that we've prototyped and we've got working. And I say we, I mean Shane Newell. Give credit where credit's due, right?
Yeah.
So your renderers will continue to work. Now, however, you're still using a renderer with the old architecture, and so there's going to be no performance gain for you until you adopt the new handler for that need. I would suggest, and this is one thing I actually did when I was working on Zappy yesterday, is I was able to ditch 2 renderers going from Xamarin.Forms like 4.2 to 5.0 pre-4 or whatever it is that we have out there right now, or maybe it's a nightly. I tend to ride the nightly train. I like to get my hands dirty, but yeah, you may be able to do without the renderers that are in your code base, which would be even better, right? Because that's less code that you have to maintain. So I wanted to point that out. So there will be a path forward for those that have custom renderers, third-party libraries. We've got a whole sync that we're working with third-party maintainers, which I'll talk about at the very end here, that you can get involved with to make sure that the whole ecosystem really makes this transition as smoothly as possible. Control registrar. John, you want to explain what the control registrar is?
Yeah, so by default, we've always historically done like this a scanning of every assembly that we load that might have custom handlers in it or renderers in it. Handlers are coming. So that's a really rather inefficient way to do it. And so we are moving to a different system where you will have the opportunity to register the controls that you want to or the handlers that you want to for each particular type. Another thing that we're sort of looking at is like how can we use some new things like source code generation and things like that to maybe make this a little bit easier to do still. So this one's a really big kind of easy one for a performance win, and it's not too much of a pain to actually switch your code to be using either.
Right. And I think with a lot of these performance related things, in some cases, we're winning just a few milliseconds, but in other cases, it may be more substantial. So I just want to kind of set that expectation that that's the game that we're kind of in right now in terms of performance, is we're winning milliseconds everywhere that we can. So this is kind of what the code looks like to register your handlers. You've got a little method there, and you can say, hey, when we're calling for a Xamarin.Forms label, go ahead and give me a label handler. That could be your system.maui.label. Which I'll make the caveat that may or may not be the actual namespace. We're deferring the namespace decision for a while so that it's not impeding our ability to do the handler work. And then, of course, if you want to have different handlers for Android versus everything else, you can do that here as well. And so you could imagine also mixing and matching new interface-based handlers with old-style adapted renderers. And so all that stuff really becomes under your full control, and it becomes extremely explicit what you are using. However, you don't have to be explicit, and you can just take the defaults that come with you as well. So not trying to show this as this is work you're going to have to do. It's work you can do if you want that tight level of control. So this kind of plays into the next topic, which is what's happening with single project. Single project is our effort to really simplify where your focus is. So right now in Xamarin, all up, you've got an iOS project, an Android project, a UWP project, and then you've got maybe a macOS project if you're using the community stuff. And then you've got your shared library. And you want to be spending the majority of your work in that .NET Standard library. First of all, it's faster. For hot reload reasons, it's super fast. You just need to recompile the shared stuff and ship it over. Anytime you touch those platform head projects, you're paying a bigger compile price. The other reason is that the way in which iOS, Android, etc., implement similar things, images, fonts, version configurations and things like that, localization can be different. And then you have to learn multiple ways to do those things. So with single project, what we're saying is we're going to bring as many of those common things as we possibly can to the single project, to that one single place where you're focused and where you're most productive. And we're going to take care of those things for you. So we have, I called this a build task spike. Is that really accurate for the font embedding stuff that happens in the build tasks?
It's a little bit of a mix. So, while everyone down south of the border was off eating turkey and mashed potatoes and stuffing and all that good stuff, and I was up here,
Well, we were
just
socially distanced and isolated. I want to point that out.
Yeah. Well, so I was trying to wallow in my sorrows because our Thanksgiving in Canada happened in October, when you're supposed to have Thanksgiving. I did spend some time with some source generators and some MS build tasks and came up with just a little bit of a prototype of what this would look like. And so it mixes a little bit of everything to achieve this. But basically, you can stick your font in a folder and then it just magically gets embedded in your app, kind of using what we have in Forms already today for the embedded fonts that work across the platforms.
It adds that assembly tag for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's building on the work that we have in there today that was brought to us by James Clancy, which is awesome. But you also have done some work on the image side of things, because you have the resizetizer package out there, which I use in all of my projects. I actually built my own templates, and it's just baked into it.
Yeah, so resizetizer, I think, has been reasonably helpful to a number of people. One of the things that you can go there today and see a branch that's called App Icons, which I've been working on here and there, which hopefully will be ready soon. But this will probably be sort of the foundation of how we bring image resizing and shared image handling to the single project world, including App Icons.
Love it. Yeah, please, including App Icons. I mean, MFractor helps, but let's just bake that in.
It's almost done. I just have a little bit left on iOS that's not working yet.
It's almost like
I was just in the themes of .NET website, making sure that all of our themes are in the right place, because some of our themes got moved into the inner dev loop one. But I did make sure that which is exciting, because C# Hot Reload is a proposed theme on there. Everybody,
it's more than proposed. It's happening. It's happening.
It's happening. But I did just make sure we recreated one specifically for shared resources, not code, not resources. And then in that comment, App Icons
totally makes sense. It can be a huge pain. And I've been doing it since, what was it? iOS 2 was the first one we could build apps for that wasn't a web browser.
Yeah, and then now we have adaptive icons on Android and everything. So you don't have to deal with that. Just let the tooling do it, right?
But you know what I saw recently? I was using the GitHub app on my iPad, and it offered me the option to change my app icon.
Yeah.
Totally cool. You can absolutely do that in Xamarin today. I didn't go mess around with it, but somebody needs to write a blog on that. I'm looking at you, chat. Somebody needs to go write a blog. So Microsoft extensions. So this is both a host builder thing. If you are an ASP.NET developer, then this is a pattern that is probably familiar to you. It creates kind of that guardrail to say, hey, here's where you set up your services. Here's where you register your handlers and things like that. So a startup class is typical when you're using this, and your host builder calls on that to say, what am I doing? And then you set up your handlers. You can also do things like this. Say, hey, I am using Forms. Here's my app. This kind of bootstraps everything for you, nice and easy. What is my life cycle? If you want to, for example, this is probably, so I did a survey during Monkey Fest USA and then the subsequent days. And we got about 166 responses real quick. Actually, I think most of the responses came within that day. And probably the second most exciting thing that people were looking forward to in .NET MAUI was consistent common lifecycle events. Like, where do I put my stuff? Now, what this is doing here is this is saying, okay, you've got your lifecycle handler all up, but you can also have specific lifecycle handlers for Android and iOS. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but kind of the reason to do this on a platform by platform is like when you're integrating something like, say, I don't know, App Center or Raygun or something like that,
or Shiny, like
or
an
Shiny.
example.
Well, you've got Use Shiny down there, and I think with Shiny takes care of that for you.
Well, Shiny would
in
use this, right? Yeah. And this is really an opportunity for. I mean, we're still really prototyping and spiking on exactly how this will work and will look. So let's kind of make sure that we're clear about that. But I think the intent here is to give you a way that isn't basically overriding all of the different things like your app delegate and a main activity, and hopefully those things can kind of just be a little bit more in the background and not something that you're going into. So if you want to register your own lifecycle handlers for a platform because you need maybe the on resume lifecycle method in your Android app in particular, right? You can get access to that. And then, these other plugins can take the opportunity to expose their own extension methods, like a Use Shiny extension method that would then be able to register itself for those. So no more like README that pops up when you install a plugin and, go add this code to this place and that code to this place. And let's just get rid of that and make everything a lot more intelligent.
Yeah. And again, bringing it back to what single project is all about. Give me a single place to focus where I'm most productive. Don't make me go to 4 different places. So what is happening for the underlying bits of .NET that allow you to run on Android and iOS, formerly referred to as Xamarin Android and Xamarin iOS? It's all .NET at this point. And so if you want to go see the latest bits, there's a bit of install instructions. You can stitch things together yourself. And from that repository, Rolf on the iOS team, Pepper's on the Android team. I think Tim has been in there. Others have been in there. John's been in there.
Lots of people. Yeah.
Lots of people. The Mono team has been involved. We just had a sync this morning across all of our .NET 6 partners. And so you can actually go there today and see this. There's some notable things you can't do. John, do you want to list notable things you can't do?
So in this repo, you would need to go install some very early preview bits, first of all. And then mostly right now, things are going to work for you from the command line. There is, I have to go look at the page, admittedly. I think we might have instructions on how to do some of the Visual Studio things that I'm not sure when the build of VS Windows is available that will let you do those. But definitely look for that as we approach, an early preview of .NET 6 support to be able to do some of these scenarios. Things like Hot Restart for iOS and XAML Hot Reload and stuff like that will be a little bit later on in the preview process.
So who would you encourage? What kind of developer would you encourage to go look at this stuff?
I think this is really interesting for plugin and library authors, for one. I think go test out the multi-targeting support and things like that. If you're comfortable with command line, you can do a .NET run and give us the device that you want to launch on, and you should be able to get your app running there too. So I think, if you're looking for iterative development with like XAML hot reload and stuff like that, this isn't quite there yet for you. But if you want to just do some initial testing to see how things run, I mean, I think there's a value in there for a lot of people to check it out.
Okay, cool. You recognize this, don't you?
Looks familiar.
It looks familiar. This is your app. So this is a Xamarin. Well, I'll let you tell what this is.
I'm sure. I mean, it's a little app I make to help do swimming pool chemical calculations. But the fun thing on this is that it's actually running on Catalyst. This is a Xamarin.Forms app. Everything you see here is Xamarin.Forms. I don't really even have, I think, any custom renderers anymore. I've gotten rid of them, like you suggested, David. I did that while we were talking, right? So this is all forms. It's running on Catalyst, and you can see that, there's, first of all, the video is recorded over like a VNC connection, so it looks a little slow, but it's not actually. It's just the recording. And most of this just works. And I think the interesting thing here is this is our plan to bring forms to macOS, which is through Catalyst. And you can see that I haven't touched forms in this example. This is forms like 4.8 stable. And definitely there's some stuff we have to work on here to polish things up, but we're pretty close just for free. So I think that's the exciting part.
Yeah, very cool. I do mention Frank down here at the bottom because this was really brought to you, yes, made possible by what he did and PR to Mono and shared bits. So if you're not following Frank, you need to go do that. Not just because he's the one that I go see when I go to Seattle every time, but because we gotta make sure our community is well supported. So also a quick update on WinUI 3 as they continue to work through their pre-releases to get to a GA on the timeline that I don't have. So you need to check with the WinUI team. But essentially, you can see the branch here. I know that this demo is very bare bones, but this is our sample running on WinUI 3 desktop. Of course, you have the option of WinUI 3, UWP, WinUI 3 desktop, etc. And yeah, it works. So not a whole lot of effort for us, thankfully. There are certainly some things that Shane has needed to work through as he's gotten this up and going. But it hosts all the things that you need to be able to do on UWP and desktop. I think you can really tell this is a WinUI 3 desktop because of the app bar at the top, right? It's that old style. Yeah. As opposed to the UWP. Yeah, so that's cool. We're excited to see that coming together, and we'll continue to be checking in on releases and iterating on that as we have time. It's not really on our schedule for like the front-loaded part of engineering work that we're doing, but we have some partner responsibilities to make sure that we get that going. Couple of timeline related things. There's probably been plenty of timeline. When can I get this? What can I use? Those sorts of questions. So from Q4, which is now, through Q1 2021 in that time frame, these are the main things that we're working on. But I do mention here that the namespace change to system.maui has been deferred. So you're going to continue to see the Xamarin.Forms namespace, and we will make a decision on that and execute whatever that decision is later in time. We don't need to make that decision today, but we do need to make it obviously eventually because library maintainers and other partners will need to know what are we doing with the namespace. But really the majority of the work is going to be on the handlers, making sure that the containers, layouts, and views are all ported over and working. Most of the other stuff like animations and interaction things, behaviors, effects, all those sorts of things, for the most part, all that stuff just continues to work. There's no engineering work to be done on those. But things like image source has been done. So you'll see that work is mostly done, needs to be merged, I guess. But removing obsoletes. If you haven't been tracking the work in Xamarin.Forms 5 and haven't looked at our release notes, please do that because there are some obsoletes in there as well. Master detail page is now referred to as flyout page. That's perhaps and related types. So that's perhaps one that might impact you. But it's a super easy change. And if you are using any obsolete APIs, you're going to want to not be using them. Host Builder, as I mentioned, is in progress. Removing data pages and removing themes. I'm referring to the NuGet packages that were previewed, I want to say at Xamarin Evolve 3. Like it was a It was a stage
It was a
demo.
while ago. Yeah.
And they've just literally never changed since that moment. And nobody ought to be using them. Everything that you need to be able to do in there, you can do in Xamarin.Forms otherwise. So you don't need these extra packages. You can do all your theming, all your styling. You probably aren't using data pages. So if you are using it, of course, my email will be up at the end, and you can talk to me about that. No more reflection on the startup registry. We mentioned that. What are we looking towards after that? And I think this is a good time to reiterate what I said earlier. It's a long timeline. And so there will be pivots, there will be adjustments. These things will change in terms of priority. We're not changing necessarily in terms of what we're delivering. We believe we're all still going to deliver these things. But the cross-platform lifecycle, as I mentioned, is very exciting for folks. If you have used Xamarin.Forms and you've been frustrated that a lifecycle event is called before another lifecycle event on one platform versus another platform, that's the kind of consistency you're asking for here, and we're going to work to provide an option for you. Moving and expand, which is a layout option that really only applies to stack layout, and it doesn't belong on horizontal and vertical layout options. So that's a refactoring there. Width and height. Interestingly, in the survey responses that I mentioned, people aren't terribly excited about us changing names of things inside of Xamarin.Forms API. The width request, height requests was pretty low on the list. Similarly, that's the kind of feedback we hear when people ask us if we're going to unify the name of our controls on, say, WinUI 3. Are we going to change from label to text block or something like that? We continue to not hear that that's a valuable thing for us to do. And I think that just as an aside, typically when I hear someone asking for it, yes, it's for consistency, but also there tends to be this assumption that you automatically get a visual designer, like Blend automatically works, and that is not the case. So if anybody can help me dispel that myth, that would be awesome. Housekeeping, Mac OS Catalyst. You saw that work is in progress, and I think I shared a link in the URL list that Maddy shared out. So Maddy, maybe if you can share that again. It is a PR from Rolf on the iOS team that shows you the work towards Catalyst. Super early. I thought his comment towards the end of the morning this morning was really good. Somebody asked, what's there left to do? And he said, everything. I'm like, probably easier to say that than to list off the things. That's kind of where we really are at with it. I mean, you saw that John's got something working there. That was a pre-built app that he was able to adapt and get to run as a Catalyst app using what Frank did. But I am working on a holiday hacks list of things that you could goof around with when you go on holiday break. And I am hoping that I will be able to share with you a Catalyst holiday hack. So I'm hoping. John's like, first I've heard of it. I've got a document from Rolf that shows me how to do it.
I'm trying to build mine with that holiday hack already as we're talking. So we'll see.
Okay. All right, gotcha. So for those of you who are super eager and excited about that, that is kind of where things stand. Now, in terms of Catalyst and support, and can you use it without .NET 6 and .NET MAUI, et cetera, we are not looking to support Catalyst as a scenario before .NET 6. Previews for .NET 6, I don't believe the timelines have been made public yet, but you can expect to start seeing installable things that you'll have to stitch together yourself in early 2021. And that is when you'll have the first installable things of .NET MAUI as well. We'll provide guides that tell you how to do it. What you can do today for a preview of .NET MAUI, you would need to clone the repo, start building and running it on top of the .NET 6 things that you saw from that samples repo. That would get you closer to what the expectation is. My recommendation, kind of like how I asked John, what's the recommendation for the kind of developer that would be most interested in doing that? My recommendation is wait until early 2021. You're just going to super frustrate yourself if you try to do anything meaningful with the bits that you're going to pull down today. So I hope that I'm being as completely clear, transparent, and saving you from grief during your holiday hackathons. So I will give you some cool stuff that you can work on. Oh, I wish I could read. It looks like Korean in the chat. Somebody translate that. Could be a bot, could be a person. So when UI3 I mentioned the timelines. We are on track for a November 2021 GA. We are absolutely going to be there. We are going to ship. We are going to hit as many of the goals and targets as we absolutely can. Right now, I wouldn't say that any of the things that we are committing to are at risk. I'm looking at John. He's not flinching. Cool.
Yeah, not too. I'm not crying yet, so
You're not crying yet.
We're good.
Yeah. So, you can imagine when you'll start to be seeing things from us based on what I've shared so far. And I want to kind of end with this as far as this is my last slide, Maddy. So I don't know if there are questions that you've been tracking, but we're getting ready to answer some of the questions. But in terms of library maintainers, whether it's frameworks like Prism and MVVM Cross, Fresh MVVM, I did not list Tiny MVVM here, but maybe I should have. Shiny, but if you have a library that you're maintaining for your company or for the community at large, and you want to be involved in these syncs, just shoot me an email. We do these, we host these over Teams. These are not live stream type meetings, so that we can have, I don't know, not that I don't have open and honest conversations everywhere, but not everybody's super comfortable with the live streaming thing. So we want to make sure that we give you a space where you can come meet with us and ask questions. Our engineers do join these calls. And so we can go deep dive on any of the architectural bits, the build stuff, .NET 6 stuff, all that sort of thing. I will mention for those who have asked, what about Syncfusion? What about Telerik? What about Infragistics? What about, insert vendor, Grape City, Component One, et cetera? We have spoken to several of them. What I understand is they're all on board so far with making sure that their stuff works. So I'm confident about that. I'm certainly looking forward to that and making sure that we enable the whole ecosystem to make this transition to .NET 6 with the Xamarin. Okay, I'm done with slides. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
My goodness. That was fun.
Thank goodness.
No, my goodness. We had a ton of questions come in, by the way. As the sun, by the way, you can see it's now 2 p.m. We started at 1 and the sun is fully in my face. So if I turn, big question we had a lot of, what is the migration story, Dave? What's going on? What happens to me when MAUI comes out? Right.
So you have choices. Obviously you can not migrate. I mean, that's, let's just be honest. That's a choice. You can leave your code where it is. I think the good news is what we saw from the survey responses is that I think it was 90+% said they're going to migrate within the first 6 months, if not before GA. I thought that was pretty sweet. And, I checked big company names, not just random independent developers, like everybody. So that's really cool. So what the migration is going to look like for you is, first of all, you need to migrate your CS proj to use SDK style, right? Your solution is going to need to change. So there is a tool, Try Convert, which you probably hear us talk about frequently. We're going to look at that as the starting point to enable you to have an automated way to make that first step. So once you've done that, you need to, of course, update your projects to be using the .NET 6 stuff. And maybe that's something that our Try Convert can do for you. Maybe it's something you would need to do yourself. And then at that point, you are updating your dependencies. You are building and seeing what breaks. If the namespaces are different in what we ship from what you have, then you'll need to make the namespace change. We will also look at what we can do to make that as easy and convenient for you as possible. If that's a change we can just do for you, then we'll do it. It's not, those who have been in the Xamarin ecosystem a long time might remember when we had Xamarin. Was it unified or universal, John? Do you remember?
Unified iOS.
Unified. Where we went from, I guess it was the MonoTouch namespace and the MonoDroid namespace to what basically Apple and Google ship.
Yeah, so, iOS only, but it was still a shift. Yeah.
Okay. So so you may remember that we provided tooling for that at the time. We know the pain involved. for the most part. Many of us remember that. So we'll make sure that we can do that as smoothly as possible. Of course, again, making sure that the ecosystem moves forward is important at this point, because, moving your code forward, you own that code, you can do that. But if you have a strong dependency on a third-party library and they aren't making the shift, or they haven't provided a .NET 6 version of that library, then you're waiting, or you're looking to replace it, right? So we'll be working over the next, we're less than a year now, to make sure that we have as many of those things available as possible, and where possible, providing adapters or shims for those things. But that's we're not committing that we're actually going to be able to like shim everything in. So my hope and expectation, depending on the complexity of your projects, is you can be up and going within days. It's not rewrites. It's not a rewrite. That's probably the biggest message that I should probably say over and over and over again. You're not rewriting your application, your Xamarin.Forms app. You're not rewriting it. In particular, Xamarin Android and Xamarin iOS, if you're not using the Forms APIs and you're not moving to .NET MAUI, your Android and iOS projects will need to make that same jump to SDK style and .NET 6 and dependencies, but you'll have less API changes to make. You'll have to adjust to whatever Apple ships, because they define those APIs. So
Sweet.
we will provide guides. We will provide tooling. The combination of the two will help you be successful. And we will be working throughout 2021. As soon as we start shipping things, the first thing you're going to want to do is start greenfield, right? Go test out .NET MAUI, install the new bits, see what a new app looks like, see if the performance is what you are looking for, et cetera, before you try to migrate. Migrate should not be the first thing that anybody tries to do, but it will be one of the first things that we start trying to do once we have something shipping. And we will be working with key customers, or any really, to work through those things and to learn and to make it as easy as possible. All right.
Sweet.
Next.
We just had a question come in. As someone who's never worked with Xamarin, but interested now, would it be better to wait for MAUI to come out before jumping into the tutorials?
That's a great question. I typically say don't wait. Use Xamarin.Forms today, because your developer experience, you'll get used to hot reload. You'll get used to the API, the control tool set that is around you. You'll get used to the ecosystem, and that your migration should be, again, pretty straightforward. If not instructive, it will not be hopefully painful for you. So you can be useful and beneficial with it today, and then you'll just gain all the benefits of .NET 6 and .NET MAUI as we ship. It's probably going to be preview 2, maybe preview 3 of .NET 6 before you really feel like you have a solid .NET MAUI that you can be super productive with. So, you could be looking at Q2 2021, Q3 2021 to be like, okay, now I'm all in. It also depends on when you're launching your app, but I would say Xamarin.Forms today. It's pretty awesome. Interestingly, and it's encouraging to me, a lot of the comments we've received during this .NET MAUI transition has been, hey, I've been using Xamarin.Forms all along. Xamarin.Forms 5 is really good. Like, I almost wonder why you're doing this.
Cool.
But there are reasons. All the reasons I've shared.
All right, last question. Lots of questions about will the Xamarin Community Toolkit be supported? Will visual material be supported? Will the tooling I have today in Xamarin.Forms be supported? Hopefully this is an easy answer.
Yes. Yes, the answer is yes. The one caveat there is when it comes to the visual material components, we are rethinking how we deliver those. So right now it is a binding library to what Google ships for iOS. And of course you use the native bits on Android. But we do some additional work inside of our renderers to unify that experience, because it's kind of the whole promise of the material design, right? Is that it's consistent between Android and iOS. And unfortunately, that's not actually what Google ships. And so we have to do additional work on top of that. And at some point you start wondering to yourself, why are we doing all this work? If Xamarin.Forms API or .NET MAUI API were capable of the styling that is necessary to achieve material design, then doesn't everybody win? every customer that has to implement their own design system, everybody wins, as opposed to relying upon another dependency like the material library that requires bindings. And John knows better than most that bindings can be a real hassle to maintain. And then somebody's always going to be a little upset when you're a version behind on alpha number 3 from Google. Because everything stays in alpha until forever. Right?
It does, and what we're finding on the iOS side is the releases are fast and the changes are frequent and the breaks are even more frequent. So it's not a super sustainable model for anyone.
Right. So I think what we are looking at for this is to really improve the entire styling, VSM, animation, shadows, corners, borders, all that within .NET MAUI, so that you can use visual material but not have to depend on those native platform libraries. So you'll get the power and then some. But yeah, everything else and tooling, Maddy, better than most. Tooling is all on board. It's getting better and better. The C# hot reload's coming. The SDK style is going to be a nice improvement, quality of life improvement. Using the same build system, we hear all the time, man, I really wish that we had a more stable, performant pipeline. Tooling, which I never even used the word tooling until I joined Microsoft. And like everybody talks about tooling.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Hot reload and hot restart support. I think John mentioned this. It'll come along. We have to get the bits, and then we can make sure our stuff works with the bits, just like all of you will be doing. And then what was the other thing I was thinking of? Oh, single project. We had a question about in the chat. We've talked about single project a lot because it's very exciting. So there's a lot of pieces to single project. The first part of it is the SDK style projects and the modern project system. And then on top of that, we have to make sure that you can share all your stuff. And when it's resources, share the code. So when it comes to like the manifests and all that. And then there's also the actual mechanics of making one single project that can multi-target and all the tooling doesn't break with that. So we're looking at it piece by piece, and those are in the themes of .NET website. You can kind of see how we split it out, which is really into first priority is resourcing and then code, and then actually having a single project. Because we talked to people and it turns out multi-targeting isn't as important as having to put your app icon in one place. So we're going to make sure we get that stuff first. It's very exciting. So that's it. We're like 15 minutes over. Pretty good stand-up. This recording will be on the .NET YouTube and the Xamarin Developers YouTube and the Twitch for a little bit. And feel free to tweet us. All of our handles are up here.
Yeah.
John, thank you so much for joining us. I know we have taken you now 15 minutes into the bi-weekly Xamarin.Forms team catch-up.
Oh.
So
they're a good group. They'll have it all managed. I'm just there for the jokes anyway.
Right, for the memes. Yeah. David, thank you as always. Everyone, enjoy your holidays. Enjoy the end of 2020. And we will see you in 2021.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.